Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we have none other than the godfather of biohacking himself. Yes, indeed, he is here today. He's taking time out of his busy schedule. Of course, I'm talking about Dave Asprey, the man who has really cultivated an entire industry, which is an incredibly and remarkable, and also the guy that's, interesting enough, probably extracted more money from me than any other person in the life, and I'm grateful for it. Why is that? Well, Dave has launched an entire business, an entire industry that deals with helping you get healthier, helping you get fitter, and doing it quicker than ever possible. So he joins us today from his deep in his lab in Austin to reveal some new things in his book that he's going to be talking about called Smarter, Not Harder. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Wade.
So a lot of things have been going on. So when did you, let's give it for some of our listeners that may not be familiar. Can you give a summary of how you got started with this concept of biohacking? You labeled it biohacking, and what do you feel drove that whole model to begin with? Like, what got you started with this concept of biohacking?
Well, by the time I was 23, I hit 300 pounds and I had the diseases of aging. I was, arthritis when I was 14, high risk of stroke and heart attack on lab tests in my late 20s. And then I got really bad brain fog. They said I had chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and it turns out it was toxic mold poisoning. But basically, my health was trash. I was on antibiotics for 15 years for chronic strep and sinus, and it made a big difference in how I felt. And I realized that I was maybe not going to make it. Like I would have fired myself, but my career was taking off in Silicon Valley. I was profoundly successful, but secretly I was all the time just had the accelerator pinned to the floor and realized I've got to do something. So I started taking smart drugs. I started, this was in the late 90s, actually. I had to order them from Europe. And I started doing all these other things that I thought would work. And I was desperate to lose the weight. One of the things that I did is I said, I'm just going to go to the gym because that's how you lose weight. And I went to the gym for 702 hours. I did 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week without fail for 18 months. And at the end of that, you think I was like a wall of muscle or something. I was still 300 pounds. I could just max out all but 2 of the machines, and I still had a 46-inch waist. So I was tired and fat and sick. I started hanging out with people 3 times my age and then some who were running an anti-aging nonprofit group near my house in the Bay Area. And these guys taught me how they were getting young. And no one thought it was possible, but they were just doing it anyway, because who cares? So I learned from my elders, and soon they asked me to run the organization. So I ran an anti-aging nonprofit group for more than a decade before I created the word biohacking. And the reason I did it is that I am a computer hacker. That was my job in Silicon Valley. And I wanted a word for people like us. And I've I was, not necessarily a bodybuilder. God, I wouldn't have been able to compete because I was fat, but I definitely was a gym rat. And there was a whole bunch of knowledge there. And then the anti-aging people knew so much, but I also got into neuroscience because my brain didn't work. The smart drugs crowd was a different crowd, and the neuroscience people were different. And I had my own EEG machine, which is why I ended up starting 40 Years of Zen. So I was assembling all these different communities and using their knowledge to allow me to continue growing my career and just functioning in the world. And I said, there's got to be a name where we can all come together and talk, right? Because you wouldn't see neuroscientists and bodybuilders in the same, domains. They don't cross over. But it turns out they're both experts in different systems of the body. Here I am. I'm a systems engineer in Silicon Valley teaching working people at the highest level how to build the internet, which is how do you stick together all these systems? So I was sort of seeing this parallel between my professional life and what is now the world of biohacking. So I needed to create a name for us, and then I needed to make it cool. And that was the very specific goal of biohacking. And I've got a 30-year roadmap for biohacking about the new and other technologies that I'm bringing in, the parts of the discussion. At the beginning, when I was working on Sand Hill Road, doing the venture capital thing, I put modafinil, meditation, and yoga into my LinkedIn profile. And at the time, if you said you meditated, it meant you were weak and you were untrustworthy. It would probably be the best word for it. So I said, I'm going to do it anyway. And then I even put smart drugs there. And what happened is that maybe 1 in 10 people, tech engineers or VCs, would, after the meeting, be like, hey, I saw you had that in there. Like, yeah, what are you doing? Here's what I do. And you realize all of a sudden, oh, there's actually a hidden underbelly of biohacking. We just needed a name. So I wrote the definition, put it out there with my first blog post. I created the first conference, which was 100 people in San Francisco. Now in June, you go to biohackingconference.com. There'll be about 4,000 people, we're estimating, in Orlando, June 22nd. And this is the most fun conference on earth because it's like people are all interested in transforming and upgrading and evolving themselves, and they'll do anything that's going to work. So we take it all the way from cellular components, getting mitochondria to be more powerful, to this year we're going to talk about things that happen in the bedroom that are directly related to human performance and how you show up in the world. And so there's a spiritual side of biohacking, and there's a profoundly physical side of it. My new book, the one you're asking me about here, called Smarter, Not Harder, this came about from launching the first biohacking facility in Santa Monica about 8 years ago. And just all the learnings from that. Bottom line is, it's easier than it ever has been to have control of your biology. And that's why, we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And I remember early on, I forget how long ago, when I first stumbled across your blog, that was kind of where everybody you were kind of writing in an unusual way in the industry because you had kind of a different approach. And I think your tech, the tech background, like I came from a physical culture background, meathead plates and all that sort of stuff, and diets and stuff. And then I was my business partner, Matt, who's been on your podcast many times, he was a weightlifter, but he was also a tech guy. And so there was this fusion between how do you use technology to enhance physical performance. And one of the things that bothered me in the bodybuilding world, which might have been similar to the tech world is so high pressure, like people are doing whatever it is to get their startup going, scale up, get the investment, make millions, or burn out and die on the way through it. Or
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. And in bodybuilding, it was very similar. People would kind of go to the success level and compromise their health and life, even though there is foundational principles inside of it. And I was like, well, bodybuilding should be about building your health and vitality. And there's a role of technology can take into this. And then the advancement of genetics and biohacking technology and epigenetics, and started getting into this thing, and it became very interesting. And I think that a lot of people underestimate how much those initial blogs pioneered a thought process that proliferated into an entire industry. So kind of like Joe Weider went from Olympic lifting and created the whole culture of bodybuilding, and then fitness emerged out of that, and all the different derivatives. Now you were kind of like, that's why they call you the godfather of biohacking. It was a way to uniquely approach and use technology and information and science in the application of living longer and living stronger. What does anti-aging or reverse aging or whatever the terminology, like, how do you think about that in an application, and how does that cultivate your thought process when you're, evaluating new technology or science?
Oh, man, one of the things about anti-aging in general that's really bothered me. Okay, we held meetings once a month at this thing called the Silicon Valley Health Institute. This is where I learned how to interview people about not just health, because health is kind of boring unless you're really sick, like I was, but about what else is possible with the human body and mind. Well, one of the things you learn studying consciousness is that your operating system in the body doesn't understand the word not. It doesn't understand the negative. Like, it's really dumb bacterial level stuff. So when you say anti-aging, your conscious brain hears young and your unconscious brain hears aging. So it's a terrible marketing word, and anti-aging just doesn't work. So I struggled for years running an anti-aging nonprofit group, saying, like, how do I get anyone who's not old to come? So these are the people with the most precious knowledge about anti-aging longevity on the planet. We are 4 minutes from Google's headquarters, and one person from Google came, and it was my uncle. I was like, damn it. Like, come on, Uncle Dick, who's actually famous at Google for being a cool engineer. But otherwise, it was really strange. It was frustrating to me, because if you take anti-aging techniques and you give them to someone who's 20 or 25, it changes their whole world. And they become powerful, and they become free, and they become able to have like an arc of life that's very different than, oh, you know what? I noticed now that I'm 60, that I'm starting to feel my age. So I better do something about it. And then that you spend all of your money and all of your time trying to get it back. What if you just didn't age in the first place? That's how to do it right. And so I was looking to inspire that, but I wasn't successful because the name was wrong. And that was why biohacking exists, because I wanted to bring in the other sides of it, the neuroscience, the bodybuilding, and the cognitive enhancement, which aren't actually part of anti-aging. But, and if you look at the arc of my books, my first book was a fertility book. Yeah, because if you want to live a long time and perform well, have a really healthy mom when she gets pregnant, and then all of a sudden you have an unfair advantage for your whole life. So there's that. And after that was, well, how do you eat, whatever your age is, so you have your energy back? And then after that was, okay, how do you make your brain work? And then after that was, how do you live forever? And then somewhere in the middle was, what do you do with your life? That was Game Changers. And then I did the book on fasting. And then now Smarter Not Harder is, there's a myth in society that when you work hard, you'll get results. And it was actually planted in our consciousness relatively recently by guys like John Rockefeller, Industrial Revolution. And it's, oh yeah, work hard and you'll get results. It's a promise. But wait, do you know people who work really hard and don't see results?
Oh, all the time. In fact, like I can remember when I first took a job bartending, and I made more money than I ever did before. And it was really fun. And this paradigm shift happened at 26 years, like, oh, the more fun something is, the more money I can make. And it blew the paradigm, because everybody in my world said, you have to work hard.
Yeah. And suffer while you're at it.
That's the other. Yes, exactly. And of course, if we go to the fitness world, there was the big debate between Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a volume guy, and Mike Menser, who was as hard as possible. But both were not something that was sustainable over a long period of time. Either way, it was to get a certain outcome. What you're saying is I would say many of the things that you've done are hard, but many of the things that you've done are smart. So you've kind of you look like overcoming being 300 pounds, overcoming, fungal infection. These are hard problems that you figured out, but you use smartness to solve hardness. So where's the configuration between those
Sure.
two pieces in your book and your thinking process? Because that's what I want to unpack.
Okay.
Here.
Let's talk about why we believe that hard work gets results. Brother, I'm really pissing people off when I say that. Okay.
That's what we want to do. We want to piss people off because that's paradigm shifting.
When I say those words, if you are triggered, well, number one, if anything triggers you, that means you need therapy. Like you have a belief that is not real. Otherwise you wouldn't be triggered. You would just say, oh, he seems wrong. But if you're angry when I say that, someone got bullied or whatever the heck your trauma is, you're going to have to deal with it. And I'm happy to trigger you. I'm just okay with that. In fact, I identify as triggering. That's one of my identities.
Well, I think everyone that's trying to build a new model is inadvertently going to trigger people who are invested in a previous paradigm.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's verdantly. That's the opposite of inadvertently, right? I do it on purpose. It's okay to trigger someone if the triggering is done with kindness and maybe humor, and it's part of driving an awareness that there's something to pay attention to. So, I mean, I'm pretty well known for talking about kale as if it's, the Darth Vader of the world. No, it's not. But the idea that, kale will save the world, the whole vegan movement, it's like, guys, I was a raw vegan too. But let's talk about laziness and let's talk about this thing. Okay. In Smarter Not Harder, when you read it, I talk about something called the meat operating system.
Okay.
Now, Wade, you and I are made out of meat. Unless you have some robotic parts in there, you never know.
Not yet.
I have one. I have a screw in my knee, so I'm mostly made out of meat, and I'm only slightly cyborg.
I've been accused of having robotic parts. How about that?
Nice. I wasn't talking about your dating life. Jeez, man.
Okay, so let's go back to the meat suit operating system.
Okay, so you have an operating system in your body, and you can say, well, how do I know that that's real? Well, at 40 years of Zen, one of the things we can measure is the reaction time of your brain to reality. So most people know what a frame rate is. 30 frames per second, it seems pretty smooth. But if you go to the theater, it's 60 frames a second and the video is really smooth. And if you watch YouTube on your phone, it's kind of jerky. Well, you have something like a frame rate on reality. And what it is a measure of when something happens, like I snap my fingers, you would imagine, okay, well, you see that or you hear that. Oh, maybe there's a speed of sound and it gets to you and then you have it. It's instant. It turns out it's not. When we hook electrodes up to your brain, for the average person, it takes about a third of a second before the brain gets the first electrical signal that a sound happened. So there's a third of a second delay on reality. Do you see that, Wade?
Well, the ironic part about that is what our predisposed filters of our life are now reinterpreting information. So we're not actually seeing reality. We're seeing our interpretation of reality.
That's exactly right. So your operating system interprets reality for you. And it does it in the context of feelings. And then we make up stories about them. So one of the crazy things that happens in the meat operating system is there's this delay, it hides the delay from you. And also in the middle of each of your eyes, there's a circle about the size of a dime where you have a total blind spot. And something edited that out of your reality, but it's there. You're going, wait a minute, what else is editing out of reality? I will tell you, after 1,500 people coming through 40 years of Zen, and this is a 5-day brain upgrade program. I mean, you've experienced it.
Done it a bunch of times. I think it's the best biohack of all time.
Oh, thanks, man. It's the most impactful thing I've had in my life for sure.
Me too.
But one of the things that you learn there, and we just kind of prove it to you with the lie detector, so to speak, is that your interpretation of reality is so far not real that if you can remove the triggers, you might be able to sense reality better. People who've had their brains trained and have the right mitochondrial formulas so you can make energy, we have a higher frame rate on reality. So you've seen Bruce Lee when he spins, like he plays ping pong with nunchucks. Like this isn't even possible. Well, he had a very high frame rate on reality. NASCAR drivers, same thing. They're faster than you or me. In fact, I think I talked about that with Danica Patrick on my show. One of the best known NASCAR drivers. And it turns out my brain is about a quarter second of lag time, which is equal to an 18-year-old. So that's because, in my guess is, if we measured you, Wade, you'd be the same because you've done 40 years of Zen and you take the right supplements and all that. So it turns out there are people walking around, we perceive reality faster than other people. And the question is, once you perceive reality, well, okay, how much filtering did it go through and what filtering did it go through? One of the biggest filters that your body could possibly put in for you is to make certain things look attractive. Like, as speaking as a man, why is it that a certain curve of butt and leg or boobs, whatever you're into, why is that just so, like, what does it catch your eye? Well, that's your body going, hey, I'm gonna manipulate the person in the brain so the species will survive. Like, that's a part of what we do, and it just catches your attention. So it can make things look attractive, because if it was just your logical brain, is it logical that a certain whatever is attractive? No, it's not logical at all. But we have this thing, okay, well, the feeling is there, therefore I'll act on the feeling. The same thing happens, and let's assume that you're standing there, and on one shelf you have your workout clothes and your car keys to go to the gym. On the other side of it is a couch, there's a pint of Ben and Jerry's, and Netflix. Now, what's your rational brain going to say is the best choice?
Rational brain says go to the gym.
Right. And what's the emotion or the feeling going to be?
Get the ice cream and TV.
Right. Okay. This is for a good reason. Your body has learned through 2 billion years of evolution that if it wastes energy, you might run out of food and die. So it manipulates your reality to make that Ben and Jerry's, which is positive energy, and the couch, which is, not having to do anything. It just looks and it feels sexier than it is. Now, we know this is a problem, except that one of the reasons we're here is to experience pleasure and happiness. So then you get the industrial barons who come along like, we need workers. Working is the path to happiness. Suffering is the path to happiness. And laziness is evil. In fact, sloth is there in the Bible. And it turns out giving in to that voice in your head is not going to lead to a good life, right? So what we do is we learn to go, well, why don't I want to go to the gym? It must be because I'm a bad person. It must be because I'm lazy. Dude, yes, you're lazy. You are alive. You are lazy. That is part of life. And by the way, laziness also caused people to, well, let's ride horses because it's less work than walking. Let's build cars because it's less work than shoveling horse poop. Let's build airplanes because it takes too long in a car. We are lazy. Hell yeah. I'm so lazy. I've started 8 companies. It's not because I work hard. It's because I'm lazy. I wanted other people to do stuff.
This is one of the things that I've addressed with so many people, is that the efficient expenditure of energy, life, the cessation of life, death is the end of your capability to utilize or generate or manipulate energy enough to keep the meat soup going. But all industrialization of society, much of evolution, is to the preservation of our energetic reserves. We need to, as biological organisms, we need to extract energy from the outside environment to support ourselves. We need to build defensive systems so that we can survive long enough to replicate. And these underlying survival mechanisms are underneath our entire biological system, which are driving kind of like decision vectors or influences underneath. And so when you take in whatever the visual cortex comes in, or whatever's being sensitive, it's going through those underlying filters, which are influencing, you know what, I'm just going to go to the ice cream. Well, that's billions of years of evolution that you've got to fight against. So with your book, Smarter, Not Harder, I think what you're trying to say is that you are judiciously looking at the upside of energy preservation and looking at maybe technology to enhance the preservation or advancement or building up of that while not being taken out by technology, which is very easy to do. Like if you go to super comfort and never do anything, like we become victims of technology now, as opposed to taking technology and using it to enhance our lives. You follow what I'm saying? From a
kind of. I mean, the reality though is working hard to get results is stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, like we just have to say it like it is. And I know that's offensive, but here's the thing. I'm going to argue that I have worked hard, especially the first half of my career. I burned the candle at both ends in the middle. I made $6 million when I was 26. I lost that when I was 28. Oops. And so I've done that side of things. And there's another side of things, which is where I am able to work hard. I am willing to work hard. And I never do it unless it's the only way. Mm-hmm. And what we've done is we've fetishized hustle culture so much that now, like, I work hard because working hard, I know I'm going to succeed if I work hard. I just got to grind it out. No, actually. So if that's the only way, then yes, right? It's just that it's not the only way. So imagine that you decided you wanted to become a software developer. Okay, there's pretty quick ways to say you go to ChatGPT and it'll help you out real fast. Go to Khan Academy. Or you could say, I'm going to get a textbook and I'm going to learn how to write something called assembler, which is how you move individual bits at low levels. I did actually learn how to do that when I studied computer science.
Very exciting.
And to do anything useful that anyone would ever see, it would take you more than a lifetime of learning those low level things. And you'd probably never end up writing something that anyone would ever see, even though you'd be writing a driver for something. So you can choose the hard way. You can choose the easy way. I'm going to build my house by hand, only with hand tools. There are guys who do that, like up in Alaska or something, because they've chosen suffering or because they think it's fun. And by the way, fun is fine. And some people, in fact, a lot of people actually choose things that hurt for fun for a good reason. Like there's a need for pain in the human existence, but we've been tricked by people who wanted us to be good workers. And they put us in schools around 1900. They started doing public schools where there's a bell to start the school, just like there is at the factory. And everything's all regimented. And we have 3 meals a day. We do all this stuff to be good little worker bees, including the idea that we work hard and that is the path to success. No, the path to success is find the best technique and only do that. Only work hard if you have the best tools. Otherwise, don't find the best tools. Don't do the hard stuff. And what I found in writing Smarter, Not Harder is that I've been working on this problem of hacking humans for a very long time, 20, 25 years before we even called it that. And about 8 years ago, I opened Upgrade Labs in Santa Monica underneath Arnold Schwarzenegger's office. I think you've been there, Wade, right?
I'm a member, and by the way, just so you know, it's a little cue. I did get the highest phase angle recorded in the labs, so I wear that with pride.
What was your phase angle?
8.2, I think.
Oh, that was the day we didn't clean the machine. It's okay.
I was able to replicate it.
Yeah, 8.2.
I actually go there every day, like virtually every day, like 5-6 days a week. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. It's on.
That's
okay. In fact, it was one of the decisions. It's one of the decisions that I made when I moved to California, is I needed to be close to Gold's Gym, and I needed to be close to Bulletproof, and I needed to be close to Erewhon. And I'm literally walking distance with
nice.
One of those things. It was a decision-making tree of how I was going to choose to live my life. And so I want to thank you for that. So
you're so welcome. So you would get this more than most people I talk to, because after so many people coming through there's 5 things that people are really asking for when they come into an Upgrade Labs. And some people are saying, actually, I want to put muscle on, 3 or 5 times faster than normal. Like, okay, we got you. It doesn't take much time. Some people are saying that they want cardiovascular fitness, and that is ridiculously effective, to the point, like, cardio takes as much time as brushing your teeth to have cardiovascular fitness. It's ridiculous. The next one is they want their brains to work better. You don't go to Gold's Gym to make your brain work better. We are rolling out neurofeedback at Upgrade Labs.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yep.
And
we're using
go ahead.
We're using the tech from 40 years of Zen to do that. It won't be the same process and protocols as when you go through the full thing, but it's a very powerful thing. We've got 7 patents on it now. And then, so if we have you're going to the gym for your brain, yeah. And some people now are asking for stress resilience to just handle anxiety. In fact, they're asking for that more than losing weight. And that was the last one. I want to get my energy back and lose weight. So those are different goals. And Smarter, Not Harder, when you read the book, I teach you to figure out what's your top goal. And then what are the tools that work best for that? And all of these are tools that are smarter instead of harder. At Gold's Gym, blessings to Arnold and, Gold's Gym and all of that. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time in gyms historically. Although I'm 8% body fat now, I was closer to 18% body fat in the gym, just saying. But what you'll find is picking up rocks is what we do in gyms. We concentrated the rocks into iron, and now we pump that. And that has been the biggest innovation on strength. And then for cardio, what we used to do is run away from tigers, or maybe run towards them if we were hunting them. But our biggest innovation there is now you can stand in one place while you're running. Like, maybe we could use some of this AI-driven tech and some of these other things in order to create a different result. And what comes out when you read Smarter, Not Harder is there's this idea, I call it slope of the curve biology, which is very impressive sounding and probably the worst name I've ever come up with for something. But the idea is that our brains save energy on thinking. And the way we save energy on thinking is, well, if something's good, more is better. And if something's bad, none of it is better. Well, the reality is usually somewhere in the middle is good. So when it comes to things like weight training or cardio, say more is better because some is good. So more better. You saved a lot of electricity by saying more better, even though it was wrong. So we believe, because it feels right, that if I do an hour of cardio, it's better than doing a half-hour cardio. Right? I mean, it's obvious. And if I, pump iron, lift weights for X amount of time. And this is that old thing you talked about, volume versus intensity. Right. Well, it turns out that neither one of those is exactly right, but intensity is probably better than volume. And what's really missing from the world of bodybuilding, except for one guy, Frank Zane, got this when I interviewed him on the show, on my podcast. I was like, I hadn't thought of that. In fact, he was one of the people whose thinking went into just the whole mental model that I use. And Frank spent an inordinate amount of time as a bodybuilder meditating.
Yeah, he had the Zane experience, that he had the float tanks, and he was going into that kind of lucid state where he would, come up with innovative things. Probably has the most commercially appealing physique of any Mr. Olympia of all time. If you took them all, lined them up from the start of 1965, most people would say, I'd like to look like Frank Zane.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's and he's older now, and he spends some amount of time every day playing the flute, and he's like a shaman kind of guy, or some sort of Zen master.
Yep.
And so much respect for him. But what you realize is that to make the body change, you have to get the right signal in. And with big data and AI and machine learning, we can figure out the signal now. That's the whole Upgrade Labs thing. By the way, I should drop this too. ownandupgradelabs.com, because we're franchising all over the country, actually the US and Canada. So if you're listening and you want to have a biohacking facility in your neighborhood, well, you could do that. ownandupgradelabs.com. And so having that amount of data and having opened the first biohacking lab and just being able to observe people, we're now able to say, well, what's the principle behind this? And the principle is that the rate that you turn on a stressor is part of the variable. That's the intensity side of what you talked about. But the rate that you turn it off and return to baseline is at least as important as the rate you turned it on.
And I would argue that it becomes even more important as we age. So I'll use a very important analysis that people can understand who are the athletes that might be listening to this. When I was, so we're going back to let's go way back in time. When I was 31 years old, I competed at the Mr. Universe contest as a natural bodybuilder. And, you know, you do all the training, you do all this, that sort of volume input and the training, the diet and all that sort of stuff. And then I retired after that and I got into hacking and I learned a bunch of stuff. I was able to come back in 2007, produce a better result without so much damage to my system. And then I retired because I said, there's an end game here that's not conducive to longevity. Now, over the last few years, I've been going to the labs virtually every day to enhance the recovery and regenerative processes inside my body.
There you go.
And it became so interesting is that I decided I would go back into a competition at 50 years old, which I did last year, and was using the technology at the labs every day, every year, with the comparison of what I was almost 20 years before, 19 years later. The end result, after 18 months of experimentation, is I was able to produce a better physique. I was able to do double the volume, but the best part was I felt better than I did 19 years before. My body fat was lower. My muscle mass was essentially the same at that time. There was no exogenous hormones, steroids, growth hormones, anything else. This was a completely self-contained experimentation. I did use some NAD drips. And at one point, I've done some exosomes and stem cells, particularly for a shoulder injury that I had and was able to recover from that. But what was interesting is I noticed that I would have to spend twice the amount of time of recovery using these advanced technologies that I couldn't recover by ordinary rest. Yeah. In other words, I had to do super rest. Then an ironic thing happened. I was using the ad cell trainer at the lab so much, and I had so much energy, I began running. So I'm like, I can't believe it. Bodybuilders don't run.
You became a masochist.
Yeah, bodybuilders don't run. So a few weeks ago, I just finished the half marathon in Los Angeles, which was easy. I ran for 2 hours straight and felt great. And I'm going to do a marathon as a bodybuilder 6 months after stepping on stage at the Natural Mr. Olympia, which I did in November. And it's directly related to that same principle. I love working out. I love training, and that's a part. But I also know that as you age, you have to do less and less because you just have less energy to both execute as well as recover. And you see the guys getting kind of frailer and older as they go along. And I was like, I don't like that model. I want a better model.
Yeah, you don't have to do that.
And the labs and the technology that I'm able to leverage in there has made my possibility matrix change. Same as the neurofeedback training when I go to 40 years of Zen. How does that translate for people? And I want to clarify to people, when going back to the meat suit operating system, what I learned after, I think I've been to other neurofeedback systems, which were good, but it wasn't comparable to Zen.
I would have just recommended the good ones. I don't like building companies unless I can't buy them somewhere. So yeah.
Well, I want to clarify, there are other programs, but
yeah, there are
better than the Zen. And the experience is I had more time to select my words when speaking. So that speed factor of my neural operating system was, can you explain what that is? I felt it was like I'm more neurologically efficient. I'm preserving more energy, and I'm able to experience reality at a faster rate, which makes it feel slower.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of Masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on Masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at Masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at Masszymes.com.
What you're talking about there is real. And people are saying, well, sometimes, Dave, how do you know all this stuff? Well, there's two aspects to it. One is your frame rate likely is higher on reality. Your lag time is lower, which means you're experiencing things faster. That makes everyone around you feel slower. Mm-hmm. So if everyone around you was slower, if you talk with Bruce Lee, going back to the way he played ping pong, it slows down. The ball actually looks slower. And I've been able to achieve that effect with electrical stimulation on my brain. So when I played ping pong against my son, when he finally started really excelling, he was beating me. And so I started using electricity. And when I would run a current over my brain, over the motor cortex areas, the ball would slow down and I could hit it. And if I didn't do that, I couldn't quite keep up with the rate of learning of a 12-year-old. Okay. Mm-hmm. What kind of person who's biologically 39 and chronologically 50 keeps up with the rate of change of a 12-year-old? It doesn't happen. Well, in order to do this, if you go back to Headstrong, my brain book, there's two things that really matter in your brain. One of them is electrical generation. That's mitochondrial capacity. That includes blood flow, because you need blood, oxygen and nutrients and all that kind of stuff. But and there's a bunch of other stuff around getting the mitochondria to work. And the other one is neuroplasticity, which is largely driven by BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So when you read Smarter Not Harder, I talk about in the brain section, here's the things that move the needle the fastest for making your brain work better. And yes, neurofeedback is in there, and there's a bunch of other technologies as well. So what you find is you go through and you go, suddenly I have a faster frame rate on reality because I make more electricity in my brain, and I can change my brain to fit the reality around me more quickly. I am unprogrammable at that point. So you can't pull the wool easily over someone's eyes when they're more conscious that way. But the other thing you're experiencing is an increase in memory I/O. That's input-output speed. And this is getting back to my Silicon Valley time. But there's how big, say, a straw is, right? That's how much you could drink through the straw. But the other one is how hard can you pull that liquid through the straw, right? What you've done is you've made for a bigger amount of bandwidth. So you get more in and out of your memory than you used to, and you can do it more quickly. So this is given that, I spent 15 years of my career doing acceleration and scalability of highly distributed systems. Your brain is a highly distributed system. So what we're doing here is those are the two biggest variables for optimizing a network, like a wide area network or satellite network, space link. It's the same kind of thinking, but that's what you did. You're faster and broader at the same time. And the same way. I couldn't tell you exactly how I know the things I know about biohacking, but people ask me questions and I'm like, I've got an answer. And it's because I have this broad ability to go into my brain and find stuff, and I can do it relatively quickly. You found the same thing. Everyone who starts doing cognitive enhancement, anti-aging, and energetic enhancements like you're doing at Upgrade Labs, you always experience this speeding up, and you look around and you're like, why? I'm at the stoplight. Why did that person wait a full half a second after the light turned green?
It's remarkable, isn't it?
They can't see the half a second. They were moving at full speed. It's not that they're dumber. And I'm not talking about being impatient or wanting to honk or flip them off. It's just like a gentle noticing that the people around me are running really slowly. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, just most of them. And maybe from their perspective, you're a maniac. Because it's scary to go at your speed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing as if you get into a race car with a professional race car driver. They're laughing as they're going around the track, and you're living in a position of terror because it's out. They're able to outperform your even comprehension of what you can take a turn at because of the skill level and the speed of their frame rate. going back to the meat suit operating system, this is a really key aspect, because I would say that maybe disease or dysfunction in the body is the inefficient use of energy in the system, would be, from either damage, or how would you call like aging disease versus efficient operation and distribution of energy or information? How would you cross?
Efficient.
This is a really interesting topic.
A highly efficient system is going to last longer, no doubt about that. The difficulty is that if you look at where energy goes, like you can have problems with bringing in air, like you don't breathe through your nose, or eating the wrong foods. Mm-hmm. And then you can have issues processing those. You have problems with your gut bacteria, or your mitochondria themselves are disabled somehow. But once you have some electricity, let's say you have 100% efficiency in getting electricity formed, there's a very large chance that you're wasting at least half of your electricity, at least your mental electricity, on useless alerts going off. It's kind of like you have your phone and you turn alerts on for every app that wants to alert you, and you're trying to do something. It's like bing, 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 and you can't use it, and it drains your battery to have those alerts turned on. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you really only got to watch 3 TikTok videos because you kept getting interrupted. Right? So what that translates to is the last couple chapters of Smarter Not Harder, where I talk about the 40 years of Zen reset process, and I talk about turning off notifications. So even if your health is great, even if you're making energy, at the upper quartile of people, like I'm highly energetic, if you're taking all of your energy and putting it into being triggered and having alerts, those alerts are designed to feel like reality. They're designed to be invisible. You're not supposed to know you have an operating system, much less hack it actively. And that's what biohacking is about. Changing the environment around you and inside of you so you have full control of your own biology. And you've got to turn off the alerts. So at the end of the day, I have a ton of energy and I don't waste any of it. Now, is that hard or is that smart? I think that's smart. It's hard work to get there. But if you spend your hard work all day, because I'm going to work really hard, I'm going to grind it out, there is nothing left to evolve. And if instead you say, all right, I'm going to look at energy as my most valuable currency, and I'm not going to waste it. You just chose the most effective, I didn't say efficient, but effective tools. And that means you're going to do what I talk about in the cardio chapter. It's like, well, let's see. You could do 5 minutes 3 times a week of cardio without sweating and get 6 times better results than doing an hour a day of sweaty spin class. And there's 3 studies from the University of Colorado supporting this. And it's an AI-driven algorithm. But okay, if you can brush your teeth, you can have your cardio handled, right? And to your point, Wade, you're a bodybuilder. The things I talk about, even for putting on muscle, you can use those techniques if you want to do your interior, whatever muscle. Okay, like that's great. Most people don't care. What we want is we want enough muscles to not die and to feel good and have a good metabolism, right? And to look good, right? So you do your chest and do your lats and do your glutes and your quads. And if you just had enough fitness there, that's going to carry through to the rest of your muscle groups well enough for 90% of the population. And for the rest of us who, I want to be good at riding a horse, okay, you're going to have to do some other stuff in your calves or whatever. So I'm not saying you don't lift. I'm not saying you don't have a functional movement coach. I'm saying most people don't do anything because it's not worth it. But you give me a half hour once a week, you can have your muscles. As we're talking, I work out 20 minutes a week, maybe sometimes 25. And I worked out this morning. And I'm 8% body fat. I don't know if you can tell on the video, I'm reasonably fit. The techniques in the book, they work at Upgrade Labs. It's real. And I have never been this lean, and I have never been this fit, and I've never spent less time. And what this does is it says, if you want to go deep like you are, and you're going to go run a marathon, and you actually are competing at 50 with the same physique, holy crap. Okay, that's possible, but you spend more time than I do.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so guys, you get to pick. You can do what Wade is doing, and it's still more effective and efficient, and it's massive, or you can do what I'm doing, which is not very much time at all because I'm working on a bunch of other stuff that's higher priority for me. right? Maybe when I'm 120 or something, I'll do a fitness competition because I'll be the only one competing. So I know.
Guaranteed champion of the world. I just have last everybody. It's a beautiful model. So let's get in. I want to ask you specifically. So what we're really describing is the optimal distribution of effective technologies to make your operating system work as smoothly as possible so you can do the maximum amount of things with the minimal amount of effort if you so desire.
No, totally wrong.
Okay, hit me. What's your version of the meat operating system, and what are the most important pieces inside of that?
When you say doing it the most optimal and the most as possible, okay, number one, we have no idea what's possible. Mm-hmm. So we are just figuring out, using big data and machine learning, all these new ways to tap into our operating system to make our reality change. It's really cool, right? So we don't know what's possible. So I don't have to put an as possible on there because it's an unknown. So just as much as possible. And the other one is, I don't want to optimize. Optimizing sucks. Right? Optimizing means I want to give something up to get something. So I want the optimal amount of exercise and cake. I want all the cake and no exercise, and the abs as if I did only exercise. Okay. So I'm not optimizing. I am.
So what are you? What are you? You're what?
I'm changing things. I'm evolving things. I'm creating new things. I'm creating better ways. But optimizing means I'm giving up something I want to get something else I want. No, I want both. And it's okay to want both. I do not want to exercise for more than 1 minute a year. That's my goal. Actually, 1 second a year would be better, right? I just want my body to look and feel like I've completely exercised more than you, or better than you, as the case may be, right? And I want it to look, and I'll be really blunt, I want it to look like I eat the perfect diet, and I want to be able to eat anything on the planet, including uranium cake, because it might taste good, right? But we're not there yet, so I'd like to get there.
So how would you describe that as a paradigm or a moving towards definition? Because you're really good at definitions, per se, like the idea.
I believe that's encompassed in biohacking, where it's full control of my own biology. And that means I can get what I want without optimizing, without giving anything up. Mm-hmm. I literally am saying, I want to, and then you insert what you want to do, what you want to be. Like, I want to levitate. All right. We don't know how to do that.
It's kind of like karma-free living.
It's not karma-free. It's not like you can pay for potato chips with exercise, right? It's actually just defining a goal and saying, this is what I want it to look like, right? And in an ideal world, I would only sleep when I wanted to, because I didn't need to sleep. Mm-hmm. I would only eat.
That's the one I want to get rid of. I want to just drop sleep altogether.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's benefits to sleep. I mean, not just health benefits, but there are times there's like emotional processing, and there's like dream work you can do, and sometimes going to sleep next to someone's nice.
What if we could drop all that and we could get all the benefit? I could just go down to the labs, hit the dream button, hit the recycle, the regeneration, the clearing button. It takes 20 minutes, and I'm like, you know what? I got 8 more hours of the day to experience life.
We're going to get there as a species. And I think Upgrade Labs is going to play a meaningful role in that. And some people are really horrified by that, and others are not. So if you're someone who's like, I love sleeping, okay, I am horrified that Wade wants to run a marathon. Dude, the first guy who ran a marathon died. Like that's why we're running a marathon, to celebrate his death. So I'm horrified that Wade's doing that, but I also think it's awesome that he's doing it because he wants to. So
I'm glad I've horrified you. That's great. I've evoked
I mean, let me tell you, you're going to run it on kale too. And now I'm just totally
chickpeas.
Oh, geez. So yeah, chickpeas in your shoes to make them squishy.
Yeah, you can soften the blow.
So what's going on though, Wade, is that we are getting to the point where we can choose. Okay, I don't want to meditate. I want to do neurofeedback, and you get more results in less time. I don't want to sleep. I want to do the sleep machine. In fact, this goes back. This is a technology that's in Smarter, Not Harder. About 25 years ago, 1997, however long that is. Yeah, something like that.
26 years ago.
26 years ago, I was tortured by my need for sleep. I'm in Silicon Valley. I have a super high pace.
There, do they? Does anybody sleep in Silicon Valley?
Not unless we're dead. And I my career, like I mentioned, was taking off, but my health wasn't doing so well. But I didn't really want to sleep, partly because I sucked at sleeping. I wasn't good at it. Like I didn't get good quality sleep. And there was so much interesting stuff in the world. I was starting to study this anti-aging stuff and this biology and what became biohacking. And I was trying to fix myself because I was actually sick and the doctors couldn't help. And I was teaching at the University of California and I was working full time at a company that changed the face of the tech industry at the time. And I'm like, God, this is so interesting. So I had my war against sleep and I bought a thing called a Russian sleep machine. And the Russians
big
have
hammer
the
that
most
comes down and hits you at the head at night.
Yeah, it's just a hammer without a sickle.
Night, Dave.
It turns out Russians, they have a mindset around biohacking that's been in the culture for a very long time. And they're like, well, it's expensive to send astronaut to space. So they're like, what if we just sent less astronauts because we took away their need for sleep? So they invented a machine where in 2 hours a night, they could get the same results as sleeping longer. So I bought one of these and we use a great grandson of that technology at 40 years of Zen now. But what it is it's a device that sends a small current between the ears at a certain rate. And I use that. In fact, I use it when I write most of my books to put my brain into certain states. And it's remarkable that you can do that, but that was designed to make humans need less sleep. And it was done like 40, 50 years ago. So we can do this. There's more coming. I'm just saying, as a species, we've been working on sleep reduction for a long time, but it's without sacrificing quality. And the problem is you say sleep reduction, everyone goes, but I lose something. No, what if you got everything you get from your current sleep times 2 in half the time? That's the difference between optimizing and transforming.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So what essentially you're applying is a transformational model of looking at the world, as opposed to this is the only way you can achieve this. And you're identifying no, that's a belief system based on current information,
that's the harder way.
Let's go below that. What are the proposed benefits that's giving us, and how do I get that faster or easier or more efficiently, or however?
Most people are so programmed by schools and coaches and parents and churches and TV and social media and all that kind of stuff that we don't know how to ask for what we want or even to imagine it anymore. It's been taken out of us.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do the kind of work that you and I have done, where you turn up that mental energy and you start editing out these notifications and all this programming, what you find is, wow, you can imagine a future where there's such a high degree of freedom for people. And it's not freedom that comes at a great cost of suffering to do it. It's not, I spent a lifetime working out in the gym and shoveling and I'm finally a good person. And no, like what if there was a way that was peaceful, that worked really well, that felt really good, that got you to be exactly in the state you wanted? So you could just show up the way you wanted every day and you could do the things that mattered to you. And what if it didn't take a lot of time? What if it doubled the amount of time you have now? What if you had 10 times more time than you had now? What if you didn't have to eat because you could suck on a USB charging cable when you were hungry instead of a Twinkie? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but that sounds kind of interesting. Let's figure out if it's possible. It's feeling safe to ask for things that don't exist. That's the smarter way. The harder way is saying, well, you can't do that, therefore you won't. It's like, well, how's any progress ever happened? Mm-hmm. Well, you got to have enough energy to think about the future. And a lot of times when we're eating the bad foods, we don't know how to sleep, we're overtraining. The things I read about in Smarter Not Harder, it doesn't work. So it's an innovative book. It's got 2 things that you will not hear about because they're new contributions to the world of biohacking. One is slope of the curve biology. It says how quickly you turn it on and how quickly you recover. That's what causes change. It's not how much work you do. Okay, that's a big idea. The other one is using laziness as a motivation instead of a source of shame.
Oh, that's good.
And so when you read Smarter Not Harder, I teach you how to do that. And since your body thinks that saving energy is super attractive, you motivate yourself with energy savings instead of with work. What most of us do is we go, well, I know I should want to go to the gym. I'm going to motivate myself by going to the gym. And your body's like, screw you, buddy. I don't want to go. And then you feel like something's wrong with you because you don't want to go. No, something's right with you because you don't want to go. So what you can do is you can say, I'm going to use biohacking and I'm going to pick a goal. And if I did it the old way, it was going to take an hour. And if I do it the new way, it's going to take 10 minutes. I'm going to go to the gym and save 50 minutes right now. And then the body's like, I'll go. Because you can trick the body the same way the body tricks you. And we know about this technique because of marketing. It's called a coupon. I mean, you've probably been with people where, oh, you know, they come back from the store. Look, I saved $100 on shoes, right? And you're like, you spent $300 on shoes.
Correct.
Like, no, I saved $100. Why does the coupon feel 5 times bigger than it is? Mm-hmm. Because our filters are that way. And if you learn to adjust your filters like that, I will tell you, I have not used a coupon in years because the time it takes to save and apply the coupons is not worth it to me, because to me, time and energy is valuable. So I see a coupon, I'm like, it's just a distraction and I don't care how much it's for. I just won't do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I'm choosing to keep my focus. But what companies do, including my companies, let's face it, this is a tried and true commercial technique and there's nothing wrong with it. But they'll say, hey, like, you know, here's 15% off or something, mm-hmm. right? The reason that that's amazing is the body goes, ooh, savings? And it feels like it's 50% off. But if you think about it, it's probably not worth $2 or whatever to give them your email address to save $2. So then you can just unsubscribe later. Like, that's just annoying. So I won't do it.
I find it fascinating. We've come to a lot of the same conclusions about how we allocate our resources and time in certain areas. One of the influences that transformed the way I looked at health and vitality and performance and fitness and business was a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. And
oh, yeah.
In 1996, I read that, and I read about saints that didn't sleep and guys that levitated and people that could eat burning hot coals and guys that lived for hundreds of years. And so, you know, some people say, well, that doesn't exist. It's a bunch of gobbledygook. And some people say that's absolutely exists. I'll dedicate my life and live in the Himalayas or whatever. But what I felt for me was that was a paradigm shifter for me. It opened up a possibility matrix that didn't exist before, much like a lot of people when they saw The Matrix in 1999. It was like, what? You could just stick a tube in your head and now you know Kung Fu? Well, that looks really cool. And then the idea that there's an artificial world that you're interfacing in. Where do you feel the emergence of spirituality comes into the play of biohacking? And maybe, you know, if you think about your contribution to the world, there's a very altruistic aspect in that so many people live a higher quality of life, have overcome a lot of conditions. And so your interests are driving positive life experiences to who knows how many people. It's, you know, it's millions potentially, and who knows what the derivative of that over, you know, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years in what that paradigm. How has spirituality and how would you call that, and how does that drive maybe who you are as underneath the machine, underneath the meat suit that makes you do what you do?
Spirituality has always been a part of biohacking, but I didn't call it out as much at the beginning of the movement, because when you're creating societal change, you can only bring it on so fast without overwhelming people. Mm-hmm. And spirituality has always been a major trigger for people, because the world of the spirit is part of the meat operating system. Mm. And we've been so programmed, and many forces, both, you know, governments, brands, churches, sports teams, they're all competing for a piece of that spiritual real estate, mm-hmm. right? And they're all competing to program your operating system for you. In fact, that's the role of culture, is to program your operating system. So a lot of our unconscious behaviors, even things like, do you burp when you eat? Like, that's actually cultural programming. Mm-hmm. Like just weird things like manners. So with spirituality, so many people have been just set up this way, where if you talk about spirituality, then they think of whatever happened in church when they were a kid, or whatever their church might have told them about other forms of spirituality. Whereas what I'm talking about is direct spiritual experience that can include whatever deity or deities you feel closest to. If you explore it a lot, you might meet some deities that you didn't really associate with, and you're like, oh, maybe there's more than one, maybe there's not. So I've had in case it's not really obvious, guys, I had the idea for Bulletproof Coffee on the side of Mount Kailash, which is the holiest mountain in the world, where Hindus and Buddhists and followers of bone, actually, they believe that's Mount Olympus, where the gods live today, and it's a pilgrimage to go there. So if that wasn't a bit of a thing to let you know that there's a spiritual side to what I do, I don't know what else to do. I've interviewed shamans who've trained me in shamanic practice, right? So spirituality is something that throughout history, scientists have been very curious about. And it's only in the last 100 or so years since the chemical industries and the pharmaceutical industries really stepped in and tried to destroy natural medicine in order to promote petroleum-based medicines. This was a campaign orchestrated by John Rockefeller. And what's going on there is there's an attempt to stamp out something that has been present for all cultures around the world with slight variances. So this is the interface to our internal world, to our meat operating system. And I hate to say it, but your operating system runs as a system inside itself, and it is part of a greater system. That the first level is the human organism, and that is part of the earth organism. So as a distributed systems AI trained person, inside your body, each cell also has its own consciousness, and each subcellular organelle has its own consciousness, and they all work via basically network effects and emergent behaviors. Your ego is largely cellular consciousness. And when you go into these states, and you've experienced some, no doubt, at 40 years in, people have experiences as if they've taken psychedelics without taking any medicines. We don't use psychedelics there, but I have, talked about other psychedelic experiences I've had. So bottom line is, if you want to have control of your meat operating system, then the world of spirit is part of it. And you can pretend it doesn't exist, and that's okay. You can believe that it's driven by one particular God, and that's okay, right? And you can believe that there is no such thing as one God, and that's okay. These are perceptual experiences we've studied for thousands of years, and we have. And until very recently, when scientists would want to study this, they would get shut down by the drug cartel. And now it's kind of breaking out. And it's actually an exciting time to be alive, because we have enough tech and enough data to study consciousness. That's why 40 years is in, we're getting all the brain scans from people who go through, so I can compare your brain having a spiritual experience to other high performance brains having spiritual experience. And that's different than right now. If you get a normal brain scan, they're comparing your brain to a set of 1970s muggle brains. Not my people.
Not to mention, I think what's great is when you go back, and once you go once, you'll want to come back again. I suspect your re-up rate is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can actually compare your brain now versus your brain before, and you have experiential differences, but then you have actually tangible, data-driven. Here was my brain before. This area wasn't lit up. Now it is. Here's your speed. And that's one of the really beautiful things that you've been able to do at 40 years of Zen, is you've been able to demonstrate in quantifiable ways qualitative experiences of life. It's just remarkable.
You can. And it's neat because you can go in and edit, kind of edit your emotional experience of things in the past when you do it. And just so many cool things happen. When you go back and you just kind of become aware of what's going on. It's just deep meditation. Mm-hmm. You could also do Vipassana. You could do Vipassana in the dark, in a cave somewhere. This is, a 10-day Buddhist meditation. You could do a vision quest. And I've done many of those things, right? Including fasting in a cave and all that. It's just part of understanding what's going on inside your body. And I come from a background, having had Asperger's, being an engineer and having a traumatic birth. So I had convinced myself that there was no useful information from the neck down unless it was in pain. So it turns out, if you want to be really good at biohacking or just doing stuff inside your body, there's a whole bunch of triggers that that have been programmed in there by Mother Nature or by society. And there's also a bunch of intuition. And so you can learn the difference between a trigger and intuition. So sometimes you just know stuff. And if you want to know why do I write things in my books, and sometimes a study comes out 3 or 5 years later validating an effect that I've noticed, it's because I've done a whole lot of work, 6 months of 40 years of Zen in order to turn off my triggers. So I'm better at recognizing intuition and figuring stuff out. I waste less electricity than I used to. And the reason that I wrote Smarter Not Harder is I think I can help you make more electricity all the time. And I can help you waste less of it by doing the 40 years of Zen type of stuff that's in the back half of the book. So that when you're done, if you do some of the stuff in the book, you'll also be more intuitive. And the cool thing is, when we're not being triggered, we are wired to be kind to each other and actually to the world around us. It's just part of being our species. So my bet is that if you have more energy and less triggers, you'll probably be nicer to everyone, including me. So everybody wins.
That's great. We'll do some rapid fire components just to get your initial thoughts. And then we'll talk a little bit. I'll ask about the conference and where people can get the book. So if you're ready for some rapid fire things, that I'm going to say a word and you just say what comes up for you.
Okay.
All right. Biohacking.
Good.
Genetics.
Interesting.
High leverage.
Huh? High leverage? I don't know.
Yeah, what doesn't matter.
It has no
Obstacles.
I feel like find a way around.
Training.
Boring.
Brain optimization.
Boring.
Say brain.
No, I said boring. I said, brain versus brain optimization. Brain optimization is boring. Brains are exciting. Brain optimization is boring.
Good, cool. Longevity.
Interesting.
Performance.
Cool.
Self-tracking devices.
Boring but useful.
Epigenetics.
Fun.
Artificial intelligence.
Well, it's not one word, but I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords.
Psychedelics.
Dangerous but fun.
Love.
Dangerous but fun. No, I'm kidding. Love. I would say that that's just our natural state.
So you have the upcoming, thank you for that, by the way.
You're welcome.
You have the conference that's coming up in Florida. I've been attending for many years. I can remember the first one I attended to in Pasadena. And I went to the conference and I said to my business partner, Matt, I was there, and I called him from the conference and I said, Matt, if you created a conference that you ever dreamed of putting together and all the conversations that we've had over the last 20 years, this is the conference that you would have created. You need to be there. And since that time, we've been attendees and vendors ever since. And I'm very grateful for the experience. And you do create, or have created, and are continuing to create probably the best conference, well, I've ever been to, and maybe one of the best conferences on the planet in regards to just the human experience. I don't know how to qualify it in an interesting way, because there's the messaging, there's the information, there's the attendees, there's the vendors, but there's some sort of je ne sais quoi about the event that's really tangible and real. And I've been to thousands of conferences, but there's something magical about the people. First off, you go in, most people look switched on.
Yeah.
In other words, they're present, they're aware, they're kind, the communication is great. There's cool things. So there's like geeks, and there's fanatics, and there's new tech, and there's new foods, and there's new supplements, and there's like, I always walk away and I walk, with a couple of things that I go, I'm so excited to apply this in my life. I can't wait to do this. And people are pounding coffee and taking nootropics and talking about psychedelics and how to have sex for 6 hours or 6 minutes, but it will be the best ever. And, and it's really fun. Can you say what the conference is for you? Where that's going? What's the intention? What's behind the conference, and why is that such an integral part of what you're attempting to do in the world?
Well, I did create the I did create the biohacking movement, and it's my job to be its champion and leader, and to kind of hold the energy for this movement, because it would be very easy for commercial interests to try to take it over and take it sideways. And there are people out there who will, copy, and probably use AI to rewrite what I'm doing now and try and take it on a different direction than it's meant to go in, and maybe not a direction of actually helping people. So it's my job to kind of keep it on track. Like, I keep the multi-level marketing guys out as much as I can, because that can be very cancerous to an industry. And if you're in multi-level marketing and that triggered you, well, then maybe you should get into a different industry now, shouldn't you? There, now I doubled down. So what's going on with the conference is, it's the most fun I have every year. There's a vibe that's very tangible when you're there. There's something that only happens in community. You set up a field where you have that many people who are paying attention, who are interested in the same thing. And we're doing breath work in this session, neurofeedback over here, and trying something new here, and just sharing that excitement. That's what creates change in the world. And it's one thing to do it when you're locked in your home for 3 years. And it's another thing to do it in person, and to not just see another person. That's what we're aware of. We see and we hear, because that's what our meat operating system is showing us. But it sees way more than it shows us. So we are smelling pheromones from healthy humans instead of unhealthy ones. We are sharing microbiome, actually, because we're breathing the same air, and that is a real thing. We're also picking up the EMFs from everyone around us, not from their Apple Watch, but from their hearts. So when you are in a room full of high vibe people, it changes you. You will resonate to that level, and they'll resonate to your level. And if you really want to see an example of this, if you look at one of those videos of birds, just like tens of thousands of birds swooping around the sky, almost like they're one organism. Well, they kind of are, and they kind of aren't, right? Well, come to the biohacking conference, and it's biohackingconference.com is the URL for it, in June in Orlando. And what happens is you're like, oh, I get to be a member of this community for this time, and we're going to really good places. And so that's why it really matters. I don't know that I can put really strong scientific words to all that, other than that we're creating culture, and it's a really good one.
It is a really good one. Where can people get a copy of the book, and any new projects that you got going that you want to share with our listeners?
Go to Smarter, Not Harder. Actually, that's not even the URL. Go to daveasprey.com and look for Smarter, Not Harder wherever you like to buy books. Like, everyone knows how to buy books. So that's where to get the book. The conference, biohackingconference.com. And I'd say buy a book, come to the conference, I'll sign it for you. And one of the things I'm really working on is up-leveling the conference, because at the biohacking conference, now we have an event for singles after years of people asking. I'm saying, well, how do I do this? I know people have met and got married at the biohacking conference.
Sure.
And so now we have a structured way to meet people who are single, and lots of things. Like we have 2 different parties with DJs and lasers and all that kind of stuff that are just really, really fun. So we're cranking up the fun, cranking up the community. And now we'll have more exhibitors than ever before. So I would just say that that's the best way to come and experience the fullness of biohacking. But otherwise, daveasprey.com, my podcast, 300 million downloads or something. It's called The Human Upgrade. And it's also worth listening to. And yours is great as well, Wade. And thanks for having me on.
Dave, it's a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. I've wanted you on the show for so long, and I'm glad that you were able to squeeze it into your lazy life.
We finally did it.
We finally did it. So we'll see you at the conference or kicking around Bulletproof or Upgrade Labs when I get in there. And I look forward to, I can't wait to go down there. I'm looking forward to being in Florida for the event. It's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you for your contribution personally to my own life and to the people in my life, because as I said earlier, I was considering before this podcast of the influential people and persons and things in my life. And I looked at, okay, well, the distribution of where I spend my time and where I spend my money is a good example of what's important to me.
Yeah.
And I spend time in one of your facilities almost every single day.
Wow. Thank you.
I use technology that I learned from your podcast or from one of your books every single day. And my company interacts with many people, but thanks to the advertising that have been on your shows and that sort of stuff that allows us to drive products and services that also contributes to this industry. And so that's been a wonderful relationship. And I was like, I'm super grateful for that. I really appreciate
thanks,
that.
Wade.
And I want to thank you personally on camera and share with people that people think about captains of industry and influential individuals in their life or reading, but they're real people doing real things and overcoming really, really tough challenges. And I'm sure that you've overcome a lot of tough challenges in this service to both yourself, but also you didn't just keep it to yourself. You shared it with other people, and it's making a big impact in the world.
Wow.
I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you as a soul to you. Thank you. And I will continue to advocate what you're doing in the world for as long as I live. I really appreciate it.
Wade, thanks, man. I feel that. I appreciate you too. And just for being willing to share. You make money doing what you do, and so do I. And I'm completely okay with that, because that's what fuels innovation. And I'm planning to keep doing this for a very long time because I think it matters, and that's what it's all about. And so, thanks for seeing all the work that people don't see. So, much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you at the conference.
See you at the conference.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.